Testosterone replacement therapy, cutting edge, optimal health, latest elite project. All right, folks, we have a real treat for you tonight. We have Jay Campbell from TRTRevolution.com. Now, what I really like about Jay, I feel makes him unique, different than a lot of people, especially that are at his caliber physically, is mentally he's at that level also. He's always reading and researching and looking for mental exercises, combining that with what he does physically, and he's kind of revolutionized, in my opinion, literally like TRT Revolution says on his website, TRTRevolution.com, the testosterone replacement therapy industry. So we're going to pick his brain and really dive into not only that book, but also his manifestation that he creates just by talking about things, and we'll get into that also. So Jay, awesome. It's an honor to speak with you here at the Leak Project. How the heck are you?
Rex, man, first off, thank you so much for letting me come on the Leak Project. Obviously, you and I have known each other now for about 2.5 months through the Decoders of Truth stuff on YouTube. And then, I've obviously been a big fan of yours for literally a year or so, year and a half when I found out your YouTube page. And it's just so awesome now that we can collaborate, not just, here tonight, but in the Decoders of Truth. But obviously, yes, thank you so much for bringing me on to talk about testosterone replacement. It is a very, very unrecognized global epidemic. And obviously, we're going to get into that and talk about this on the show. But man, I'm really pumped and excited to be here.
Me too. It's seriously an honor to know you. And even though we've only been in contact for, about 3 months, it seems like we've known each other a lot longer than that. So
agreed.
Okay, so the medical industry, the medical mafia, big pharma industrial complex, I certainly see 90% error and maybe 10% that's good and has serious benefits to people. But, like, for example, if somebody gets super sick and they get a cut and antibiotics can fix it right up and that's the quickest option, I'm sure there's alternatives out there too, but maybe that's a great opportunity. If somebody breaks their arm, they need to go have somebody fix it real quick, cast it up, great. If you need to go get surgery, get something done really fast, emergency medicine, wonderful. But it seems like big pharma has literally taken over the doctor's way of life in that industry, so they're succumbed to this Borg system. And one of the things you don't hear a lot about is testosterone replacement therapy. What you do hear about it is, it's steroids. You're going to get cancer. That's what those meatheads are doing. Look at
right.
And there's people out there that do look like that. But seriously, if you do it the proper way, from what I understand, it can be very beneficial.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So, just to put, everything out in front for your audience so that they understand this. So what I recommend and what I advocate, obviously, in my book and in my lifestyle and in all the people that I reach out to and stuff is that we're talking about testosterone replacement therapy from a therapeutic range level for, ultimate vitality and longevity, right? So we're talking about a very small micro dosage of testosterone that a man and even a woman, and we'll talk about women and testosterone because that's also very misunderstood, but used to completely optimize and revolutionize their life. And so what happens with testosterone, especially, and we'll get into obviously, what's happening right now with men worldwide, but as a man ages, they lose production of testosterone. And, most of the studies on testosterone, unfortunately, as far as like understanding it, like how much you lose as you age versus decades of your life is literally from the 40s and 50s. And as my book points out, as you mentioned, our grandfathers had much higher natural testosterone levels than we do. And then, of course, our fathers even more than what we have now, too. And again, the reasons for that is mostly environmental. When, in the 30s and 40s, when they first started doing these tests on testosterone and stuff like that, obviously we lived in the United States for the most part still in an agrarian economy, mostly agriculture. Yes, industry was starting to expand in some of the big cities. But for the most part, we lived in we had air quality that was not as contaminated as what we have today. So what you see today and why it's such an epidemic worldwide is almost all the coastal population centers, and this, Rex, as we've talked about this in the past, are just laden with particulates and BPA and phthalates and just so many different, horrible, harmful, what are called endocrine disruptors. Okay. And what an endocrine disruptor is something that actually disrupts your endocrine system, right? The male endocrine system and the female endocrine system is what allows a male and a female to maintain their balance in their hormonal and biological systems. So these endocrine disruptors are gnarly, man. They really, really cause havoc and just disrupt everything. And so what it's led to is, as we've gotten, into this 21st century now in the year 2016, is that the average guy, by the time they're 25 to 30 years old, is already starting to see a decline that normally didn't happen in, going back into like the 30s, 40s, and 50s until they were in their 60s. So it is like I said, an epidemic. It is completely unrecognized for the same reasons that you talked about at the very beginning of this, which is medicine as a whole is not trained to handle this. There is no standard patient care model for what is called andrology, which is the study of the male and female endocrine system or hormones. And it takes a very smart progressive physician trained and schooled in hormonal manipulation to actually even test for it. Like, Rex, I'm not kidding you, and you probably know this, but the average guy today who goes to his doctor at 30 and says, "Doc, he complains of brain fog, a lack of libido, a lack of energy, just like that soul crushing, like I'm just indecisive." Well, here's what the doctor scripts him. Okay. The doctor will script him an SSRI inhibitor, right? Which is a Wellbutrin, a Paxil, a Restoril, a Prozac, something like that to increase their mood and make them feel better. And then on the same time, they'll also give them an erectile dysfunction drug like Cialis, Viagra, or Levitra. So what they're doing is they're lacing them and loading them up with pharmaceuticals that aren't even attacking the source, the root source of the problem, which is he now has a reduction in his natural testosterone levels. And so they're not even doing the blood work. They're not even trained in medical school to even test for it. And in my book, of course, I always default to my book, I have proof that optimizing a man's hormone levels will solve all those other issues. Like literally, you could solve 20 to 25 issues that a normal guy comes in and complains about. And we'll get through them in a second, by just optimizing his hormones. And nobody, again, unless you're seeing a specialist and a very progressive physician who treats for this, is even looking at this. It's horrific, man. Horrific.
So do you think that on top of the environment, and the medicines, maybe specific foods, particular products out there, the ingredients that are in them cause effects on the body to where people can't produce the amount of testosterone, or if it's a female, maybe she can't produce the amount of estrogen even, or testosterone on top of that?
Both of it. You're 100% accurate. All of those things are leading to just a harmful hormonal cascade of just caustic, destructive, like I said, endocrine disruptors. But yeah, GMO food, engineered food, fast food, drinking out of plastic water bottles. I mean, you name it, from sitting in your car and, the sun hitting your dashboard and, releasing the petroleum distillate from the, just the rubber and all the other chemicals that are in your asphalt. I mean, there's no way to avoid this. And so, my theory, and again, as espoused in my book, is I'm saying that guys at the age of 30, and honestly, Rex, a lot of guys much younger, I talk about this. I didn't do a good enough job in my book. This will probably be V2 of the book, but there are a lot of guys around the world right now that are even seeing this in their late teens and early 20s. But it's imperative, if you are a dude and you care about optimizing your hormones and feeling the best that you can be, that you get your blood work done. And I have a cheat sheet and a guide. It's all step by step in the book on how you can do this. You don't need a script from a doctor. You can absolutely go to a private lab draw company. There's a lot of them now. I think probably 15 to 20 of them in just North America alone, and just pay $200, $180, whatever, with a coupon, and get a full comprehensive analysis of your blood so that you can understand your biomarkers. Because listen, no doctor is going to look at this stuff for you, okay? As we know, if you are a quote-unquote healthy person, non-sick, and you go to a doctor through your benefits and you say, "Hey, doc, I'm feeling kind of blue, and I read Jay Campbell's book on testosterone. I really want to get my testosterone, my blood testosterone levels measured." Rex, they'll look at you like you're fucking nuts. I mean, they'll literally look at you like, "Well, you don't need that. You're 27 years old. You're 32 years old. That's not something you need to do. That's for 70-year-olds." And that's if you're lucky and the guy's even smart enough to even say that he understands anything about testosterone. Most of them will just say, "Oh no, you don't need that. Trust me, I'm the lab coat doctor God, and you listen to what I say." So it's like I said, it's an epidemic. Most men don't even know that they have low testosterone, Rex, because again, what happens? They get scripted, Wellbutrin or Prozac or whatever, and their erectile dysfunction drugs. And then, 5 years later, their mood feels a little bit better because they're on those happy drugs, and they get stronger erections, better hard on, but they still feel like shit. They still have, brain fog by 2:00. They still have no energy. I mean, it's the average guy in America. He comes home by 4 or 5 o'clock at night, 6 o'clock at night, and he's dead to the world. Can't have sex with his wife, can barely play with his kids, is fat, probably has a lot of abdominal obesity, has metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, you name it. And it is a disaster. And again, with all those other things, what is he? He's a perfect advocate for all the other pharmaceutical drugs that they're going to sell him to take care of all the other issues that could easily be cured if he had his hormones optimized.
So how much does it require as far as working out to stay in optimal shape? Like for you, you can definitely tell no matter what age group you're in great shape. How much do you work out a day or a week?
So Yeah, so it's a great question. So I'm 45 years old. I'll be 46 in February, and I literally train with weights at the most 4 times a week. Most of the time, due to my busy work life schedule, it's 3 days a week. I do have a stationary bike, and my wife and I have also a treadmill in our home. So we try to rotate, like wake up early in the morning before the kids get up, and the whole pinochle shuffle starts with school and work and all that stuff. And we'll try to do maybe 20 to 30, maybe sometimes 35 minutes of cardio, like on an empty stomach in the morning. Probably 4 days to 5 days a week. Like this week, dude, I haven't had a chance to even do cardio once this whole week. I mean, I trained yesterday with weights, and I think I trained on Monday and Tuesday. So 3 days. I haven't had time to do anything today. But if it depends. Like in my life, and my wife and I are very similar in our physiques and builds and how much care we take of ourselves. We're very type A's, obviously. Owning a business and being entrepreneurs. We're in real estate and stuff like that. But if we're trying to do something like go for an exotic summer vacation or a bikini, a beach location or something like that, which we did, like we went to Cabo in the very beginning of August, then we'll make a concerted effort to take like 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks where we really focus on our diet hardcore, where we eat lower carbs, reduce carbs, reduce our insulin signal, and increase cardio so that we're doing cardio like daily in the morning on an empty stomach. But weight training never really varies very much for me. But again, I'm 46 and I've been doing this lifestyle that I live and that I preach. This is 26 years. I've been doing this since I stopped playing basketball when I was 21 years old. So I mean, I'm almost 46 now. So it's like about 25 years I've been living this lifestyle.
When did you start doing the testosterone replacement therapy?
So it's a great question. So when I was 29, a month away from turning 30, I went to the doc and I said, hey, what's going on with me? I'm run down. And again, I was playing, I played basketball in college, and then I had a small cup of coffee overseas. I played in Austria. So when I came back, I still played in my 20s, in my mid 20s. I played in adult men's leagues, pretty competitively. And I think I was probably playing in 3 men's leagues when I was 29, and I just was broken down, dude. I had no idea what was going on with me. I went to the doctor, and again, this is in like 1998 or 1999. I was just really lucky, right place, right time. And the physician that I went to referred me to a specialist, an endocrinologist, and the guy happened to be a Harvard-educated, world-class physician. And he literally said, "Hey, dude, let me run your blood work." And I came back with like 278 testosterone, which is literally on the testosterone range was below like the margin, like 300 to 1180 on most of the total testosterone levels is the range. I wasn't even on the chart. And I'm this 29-year-old guy, ex-pro athlete, still in great shape. And he's
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to ask you a question about that. Did you take any steroids or growth hormones or anything like that before then while you were in great shape?
No, great question. I never did. I mean, I was a student of this and I read about like over-the-counter test boosters. And, I think the only thing that I ever took in my life was I took hot stuff. And that was like a powder that they gave when I was in college. Like when I first got into like, training and lifting weights, when I was done playing basketball for the most part, I started taking this powder. You could buy it over the counter at like GNC. It was called hot stuff. But I'd never taken anything. I'd never taken pro hormones or anything. So no, it was the first time I ever took anything. So I never had like an exposure to, like pro hormones or steroids or anything like that until I was 29. So when I got put on the testosterone by this doctor, literally within like 3 or 4 weeks, man, I felt like I was 18 or 19 again. I had all my energy back. I wasn't tired. I felt amazing playing basketball. I was suffering from some like low back pains and, just wear and tear. Felt like I was beat up, and everything came back and I just felt awesome again. So then, from that, I worked with this doctor for a couple years. And then, I started working with different doctors. I really got into reading about this. I got super, super intellectual about it. And I just studied it. And unfortunately at that time, this is like in the early 2000s, there wasn't a lot of literature. The internet hadn't taken off yet. The books that were written was the one book that I'll always give credit to was Built to Survive, which was written by a good friend of mine, Nelson Virgil, who's also a very big pioneer in the testosterone space, the testosterone replacement therapy space, and his doctor, whose name was Dr. Michael Mooney. And they were they're both gay, HIV survivors at that time. And so they wrote this book like using completely off-label, using testosterone, using some other anabolic agents to save their lives, right? Because at that point in time, there was no cure for AIDS. There was no retrovirus vaccines. There was nothing. And basically they had all death sentences. So these guys started experimenting using testosterone, decadirable, and a couple other different agents and stuff like that. And they wrote this amazing book saying, hey, look, this stuff is totally misunderstood. It should be looked at from a medicinal standpoint because this is life restoring, if not life enhancing. So anyway, that was, again, a very, gray market, very off-label book. But I read that, and then from there, I just started reading PubMed and Medline, and there was a lot of studies that the Bulgarians and the Russians were doing on testosterone and some other metabolites from the 60s and 70s. But again, it was very hard to get it into the United States. This is way before the internet. So I read as much as I could, and obviously I just continued to stay on testosterone at a therapeutic dosage and level. And, to this day, I've been on it now for 17 years, and I could never imagine myself going off.
Well, that's one thing that a lot of people, I'm sure, are concerned about, that if they take testosterone, that if they decide to stop taking it, then their body won't produce enough at all, and then they're in big trouble.
That's exactly correct. So here's my statement to that. When you go on, so it really depends on your age. So if you're in your 20s and 30s and you have a serious testosterone deficiency, and when I say a testosterone deficiency, it means you've been diagnosed by a doctor, okay, clinically, which means not just your blood levels on a measurement lab readout, but also symptoms. And again, my book has all this. There's like 7 to 8 to 10 symptoms that if you check off 5 or 6 of those, then they can clinically diagnose you as having low testosterone. If you're in your 20s and 30s and you still want to have children, then this is a conscientious decision you have to make. There are other medications that you can take when you're on testosterone, because as you stated, using testosterone will disrupt your body's natural production of testosterone. So once you go on testosterone, you are making a decision to be on testosterone for life. Now, that said, you can come off of testosterone and use other ancillary medications to restore your body's natural production. But here's where it gets interesting, and why most doctors miss the boat on this. At 30, your body starts declining literally, and this is, again, remember, we're looking at data, we're extrapolating from data a long time ago when guys had higher natural testosterone production. So I don't even know what the real data is now. But at 30, your body starts to decline as far as its testosterone production by 1 to 3% per year moving on. So if you do the math on that and you're a 2% guy, well, guess what? Between 2 and 3% in 10 years. So when you're at 40, you're down to like literally 45% to 60 to 50% of your body's, prime testosterone production at its peak, right? So we're all biochemically unique. We're all individual. So some guys at 20 have 1,100 natural testosterone levels. And some guys, because again, they're unique and they're different, they have high fat or high estrogen, which we'll talk about in a second, they might only have 400 or 500 at their peak. So what ends up happening is if you start doing the math and you extrapolate that data, most guys who don't have optimal test in their youth, and again, right now, today, that's most, they're in a decline that's never coming back. So a lot of these guys, my point is, a lot of these people that say, oh, well, if I use tests, then I'm going to destroy my body's natural production. Well, my argument is you don't have any natural production. And as you get older, it's not going to come back anymore. If anything, it's going to continue to drop even further. So why not do the right thing or the preventative thing right now? Take ownership of your personalized health and start optimizing your hormones so you don't have to wait for that decline where you just fall off the cliff. And that's unfortunately what most people don't do. And I try to, and again, the book has all this extrapolated, but I try to look at like generations of people. And the baby boomer generation, like my father, who's 70, and my dad is like a really awesome guy, very well-to-do, retired and everything, but he wouldn't touch testosterone with a 100-foot pole. Doesn't matter that his, son wrote a best-selling book on it, and I'm one of the leading experts in the world talking about this. He still won't touch it. I mean, he loves me and we talk and everything, but he will never touch it because he comes from a generation that believes that using testosterone is cheating, or it's immoral, or it's unethical, or it's it's a steroid, or all this nonsense that the media has filled their heads from that generation. And so he won't do it. So he suffers in silence. And, has low testosterone for sure. I mean, he won't get his blood test to prove that. But I mean, believe me, I've seen enough guys. I've helped thousands of guys. I've read lab panels of probably 20,000 different dudes in the world. I know when somebody has low testosterone. And there's millions of guys. I mean, literally, that's not an exaggeration. There are millions of men like my father, baby boomers for the most part, that generation, over 60, who just refuse to use testosterone because of the same reasons. And it's really sad because testosterone will help at any age. Like a guy who's 30 who needs it will improve just as much as a guy who's 75 and needs it. That's how amazing the lifeblood molecule of testosterone really is.
So if you were to say, out of all the people you've seen, approximately the 20,000 records that you've had access to, who are the majority of people that you deal with if you were to categorize them in careers? And what are some of the really cool, unique careers or people that you talk to in certain industries as well?
Great question. So most people that optimize their okay, well, let me take a step back. So that's a great question, by the way. Good job, dude. So the reality is that today, right now, this therapy, remember, there's no standard of patient care for andrology or hormone replacement therapy. So this type of stuff is out-of-pocket expense. So the average guy in America, the Joe Public, Joe Sixpack guy cannot afford this, okay? Because if you're going to work with a really good progressive physician right now and pay for this stuff out of pocket, it's going to cost you anywhere at the lowest end for about, $275 a month to like the exotic top end clinics like in New York City, LA, San Francisco, Miami. These guys charge $600-700 a month, right? Like I work with a company called Checked. And Checked is amazing. And, just to show for them right now, they're the first company in the world that actually will come to your house or office and do everything literally, take your blood work at your place of business or your home, give you a physical right there on the spot, And then again, depending on what you qualify based on your blood work, script you hormones, script you nutraceuticals, script you whatever. So they're like, they're the first level of truly taking personalized control of your health, where you don't have to go into a hospital or, a medical clinic and sit there and deal with the bureaucracy and deal with benefits and deal with all that nonsense. But again, that model right now is not reimbursable through insurance. Okay. So to answer your question, going back to the original part is very few people that are doing this right now are not people of means, white collar, six-figure wage earners, people that can afford this out of pocket. Because like I said, the average guy cannot get this done. Now, that's not to say that a 55-year-old guy who needs it really, really bad and doesn't go to his insurance provider and bangs on him and bangs on him and bangs on him and says, this is bullshit. I've paid all this money all my life. I want insurance. I want them to cover my testosterone. It happens, but it's still, man, it's definitely the exception rather than the rule.
Okay. And also on top of that, do you notice a lot of people that you work with, or maybe select few, are in specific martial arts, maybe they law enforcement, SWAT, special ops, stuff like that?
So it's a great question. So it's a tricky, I can answer it with no problem. You know me, I'll say whatever. It's very tricky. Most of those guys, if you ask them point blank, are they using TRT? They're going to tell you no. Because their superiors and, the people they work with are trying to say like, look, this can't get out. But I can tell you that there are a lot of law enforcement, a lot of military, a lot of spec ops guys that are working with physicians, docs that I represent and consult with and work with. But they do this kind of like, off label. It's not on their private record. And again, they're paying out of pocket. It's unfortunate because the military, in my opinion, should be automatic for everybody, right? Like everybody who serves in spec ops or serves in a tour duty should be on testosterone. In fact, a lot of the spec ops guys, when they come back from their tours, and these are young kids, Rex. I mean, and I have a lot of friends with them. There's like 5 or 6 of them in the Dakotas of Truth. These guys are like 22, 23, 24 years old, served like 3 or 4 tours, Afghanistan, Beirut, like all kinds of crazy, places that are like super hot places as far as like, where they take live combat, and they come back with their endocrine systems destroyed. I mean, because remember, these guys are going sometimes 3 days without sleep, poor nutrition. So they come back and their endocrine systems are a mess. So a lot of those guys, are seeing great, progressive physicians because they have no option. But dude, I'm telling you, very rarely does the military, like the VA hospital and the Veterans Administration, do they support this. It's very, very rare. Like you have to really go through the right clinic, and then that clinic has to know how to use the right coding system to get these guys treatment. It's really sad because these guys are left behind and there's no reason for it at all.
Now, on top of that, if somebody did say, I don't know what the difference is between steroids and testosterone, what is the difference?
Sure. So it's a great question. So like, and I don't want to get too esoteric for, the listening audience, but, so testosterone is the lifeblood molecule, and it is the biggest steroid hormone in the body. Okay. Think of it as like this, like testosterone is the sex differentiator hormone, right? So testosterone makes a man, and a woman, a woman. And I mean that because like if a woman wants to become a man, they use, a transgender woman, they use testosterone to become more masculine. So we want to make sure that people don't demonize testosterone as a drug, because again, it's not. Unfortunately, the United States Food and Drug Administration classifies testosterone as a controlled 3 substance, which is a total scam. Don't get me going. I could go all night on that. There's no reason that it should be, but it is. So it's a felony to have it without like actually having a doctor's prescription. But the difference between testosterone and like anabolic steroids, anabolic steroids are synthetics, meaning they're different versions of a steroid molecule with an ester cleaved or a bonded chemical added to it. It's just different at its molecular level. So all of these anabolic steroids are totally different from testosterone as the base molecule, and using them definitely, especially when you use them in super physiologic dosages, which is what most professional bodybuilders do. I would say a lot of also like high level professional athletes, Olympic caliber sprinters, Olympic caliber type people, they will use these in super physiologic dosages for specific reasons. When you're using anabolic steroids, again, the synthetics, at super physiologic dosages, that's when you are putting your body at risk. There's a lot of side effects. Again, these are all discussed in my book. Again, my book is not a book about anabolic steroids, but I do have a chapter about side effects. And I do mention that, the difference between anabolic steroids and testosterone replacement therapy is like night and day. Does that make sense?
It does. And also, I've seen people that you can tell clearly are on some serious doses of performance-enhancing drugs. There's a gentleman on YouTube right now, and hey, I'm sure he works out 12 hours a day on top of that, but his arms are so big that they're literally larger than some people's waists. We're talking probably 30-something inch, and it just doesn't look, looks like something the Hulk you would see in a film. And I wonder how much of that is water, blood, etc., versus just natural muscles. And or not natural muscles, but you get my point. So what is when do you go over the top? I mean, how much is enough versus too much? Because there's people out there that want the edge, they want to be super extreme, but then there's got to be that point of diminishing returns with anything, I'm sure.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a really, really good question. I would definitely not consider myself an expert on anabolic steroids and performance enhancement. I definitely know, I think, enough to be dangerous. Again, it's not my cup of tea. I don't really, consult with. There's guys out there that are like really massive, performance enhancement experts, like Bill Roberts, George Touiatis, who's a guy in Greece. I mean, these guys are all my friends, and we're all in like similar circles. But so the guys that are using like super physiologic dosages of anabolic steroids, their main reason for doing it is, again, for the and I'm not talking about for recreational, morons out there that, like you said, are like trying to swell up their body parts beyond superhuman size. Professional bodybuilders use super physiologic dosages, and obviously their end goal is, to be a professional, like to win the Mr. Olympia, to win other professional bodybuilding shows, which do have, very large cash prizes. I think the Mr. Olympia now is $1 million, plus other stuff, like a car and all these other, and like endorsements that probably represent $25,000 or $30,000 a month. So even though those guys are still using illegal super physiologic dosages, I think that most law enforcement, know that that's their career, and I don't see a lot of those guys getting busted. It's sad. Again, it's another weird symptom of our weird society that we all live in, where we're watching this spectacle of like these swollen, gigantic, oversized men using, super physiologic dosages of anabolic steroids and testosterone, but yet nobody is arresting them, even though it's like obvious we know they're doing it. So it's bizarre, but for the most part, for other people that are using really high level dosages and for no other reason, they're putting their health at massive risk, right? You can increase the size of your heart. There's like what is called aortic ventricular hypertrophy, and a lot of guys that take massive dosages of steroids, because remember, the heart is an organ, it's a muscle, it pumps, that can enlarge, and that can cause all kinds of stress to your arteries as you get older. There's been a lot of like pro level bodybuilders who have died from like an aortic, it's called a mitral relapse or whatever, where they have just like a sudden stoppage and then they have a heart attack. So again, because if they've over enlarged the size of their heart, and then of course their vascular pathway is connected. So there's, in my opinion, like I don't see any value in doing it, even if you were a pro bodybuilder. And a lot of those guys have amazing genetics, and that's how they get so big. And they're just, their genetic component allows them to get that to that size. They're still putting their body into unneeded risk. It's super, super risky. And I don't see it or support it. As far as like what you were saying about some of those guys on YouTube, dude, those guys are injecting like literally like plasticizers, chemicals. There's a chemical called synthol that bodybuilders, and there's probably even better derivatives of that nowadays. God, I wouldn't even know, but they inject it into their bodies, and it actually increases the size of the capillaries and the tissue right in the area where they inject it. So that's why their arms swell and they become engorged. So it's absolutely retarded. There's one guy on YouTube named Rich Piana, who's pretty famous now, and he's God knows what injected himself into his body with who knows what, and he's like gigantic. He has like 23 or 24 inch arms. Again, to me, it's all silly. There's no health benefit from any of that. Any of the fame they got from being that size. A lot of people like to look at giant people. I mean, I don't know what else, but it's totally not healthy, and it's nothing that I would ever advocate in my life.
Yeah, certainly much appreciated you bringing the awareness to people, because a lot of people, I'm sure, might want to go over the edge, and that's probably one of the reasons that it gives the bad name for everybody, because of just a very small portion. Kind of like, remember back in the day when ephedra / mini thins were totally legal,
right,
and then kids would pick them up in high school and take 30 of them, 40 of them, 50 of them the next day.
And stroke out, yeah.
So now you can't do that anymore. So I'm really glad you're bringing both sides of the coin to our attention. You're being, you're very knowledgeable with this, Jay, and that is also fantastic to get into detail as much as you are. So, maybe we could also jump into what are the levels. You brought up 280 to 1100, correct? But what's the optimal, and what do you keep your levels at?
So it's a great question. So we're all kind of biochemically unique and individual. There's no like optimal level, like what a good clinician. And again, I'll put it right here. I'm not a doctor. I have a lot of background in this, and a lot of self-study over 20 years. And that's why I was able to write my book, but I'm not a doctor and I can't prescribe these things. I do consult with guys that do work with great doctors that understand this, but the normal answer from a really good progressive physician is, depending on your dosage, and we can talk about the different forms of testosterone. There's different delivery systems. Obviously, again, I'll default to the book. Anybody who wants to understand this in greater detail than you and I interview tonight, please read the book. My book is actually for free. You can go to trtrevolution.com/PDF and download the book for free. So feel free for anybody in the audience to please go download the book. And then we also have a paperback giveaway if you just pay for shipping too. So, but the different delivery systems, it just depends on the delivery system you're using. Like the best, most stable form from a delivery system that works universally across the board for most men is injections. And there's different esters when you inject. There's cypionate and anethate, testosterone cypionate and testosterone anethate. They are longer acting testosterone esters. So what that means is that their half-life of the drug inside the bloodstream, the way it cleaves and the way it breaks down and becomes bioavailable to you, is slower than some of the other esters like testosterone and propionate. So most guys, and again, it just comes down to, your proclivity to be injected. Most men who do this right, working with great progressive physicians, are usually doing 2 shots a week. And again, their dosage is anywhere from 50 milligrams to 200 milligrams a week. So if you're in that range of 50 to 200 milligrams a week of a total testosterone dosage, your scale score over a 7-day moving average from like peak to trial is probably going to be somewhere in the range of like 650 to 1300. Okay. And then anywhere in between. So what that means is that over a 7-day moving average, your testosterone at the lowest point is at 650 and is at the highest point is like in the high 1200s or low 1300s. That doesn't mean that some guys don't drop down to 500 and go up to 1400. So again, we're all biochemically unique and we all process and metabolize the testosterone molecule differently. Some guys, break it down faster. Let's say they inject on a Monday and by Tuesday they have a 1400 level, but by Thursday their level's down to 525. So again, we're all kind of different, but if you were going to give a range value estimate to be optimized, to be optimal, not to be normal, to be optimal, you're probably going to be in the mid 600s to the low 1300s or high 1200s in that range over a 7-day average.
And also, what are some of the main objectives that the doctors have to deny somebody the opportunity to go on TRT?
So that's a great question. And again, heavily discussed in my book. In fact, my book is by far at this point the most well-researched book in the world from a standpoint of studies that contradict most of the mainstream media and the propagation of and the demonization of using testosterone. And what I mean by that is the 3 primary, quote unquote, side effects or risk factors that everybody claims about testosterone are heart issues, issues of the vascular system, prostate issues, and then the third one would, I guess, be cancer or some other nonsense that they say that these 3 things that using testosterone can cause. And so my book very conclusively proves that it's actually the opposite. In fact, and again, I go to my book and I don't have the studies in front of me right now, but they're all very, very conclusively researched and pointed out in the book. The study that created this controversy about 3 years ago that all the attorneys glommed onto about testosterone causing heart issues or vascular issues. The study is called the JAMA study. It's heavily discussed in my book. The data, it now turns out, was falsified. And it was also in a high-risk patient cohort, which means from a lay terms, it means a group of older men who are over the age of 65 who already had pre-existing heart conditions and would administer testosterone, therapeutically. Like 52% of them had a vascular incident within 12 months of doing it. So, I mean, again, the data is so spurious, and on top of it being spurious, it was misidentified because they extrapolated the math wrong. So that study, though, Rex, was used in all these massive class action lawsuits across North America, where you've heard them on the internet, you've heard them on radio stations, you've heard them on television. Hey, if you use testosterone, do you know you're eligible for a claim? And it's complete nonsense. And I'm bringing that up because my book very clearly proves this now. And again, it's in the progressive physician community. And as we know, it's a very small subset of doctors, unfortunately. They now know that testosterone is, quote unquote, cardioprotective. And what that means is that if you have low testosterone and you're in your 50s and 60s, you're at a much higher risk of undergoing some form of a vascular disease, incident, or occurrence. So the higher your testosterone from an optimal level as you age, the less likely you are to suffer a heart issue. Now, the same thing goes for prostate, okay? There was a study done in the 20s and 30s. I can't remember what it is. Again, I'm going from memory. That with some people that were already had been diagnosed with prostate melanomas or tumors or something, and using testosterone at that time when they were doing experiments caused an acceleration of a metastatic tumor formation. And so they extrapolated that data all the way up until today, in like the last 3 years. And it's always been understood in hospitals, especially across all medical schools, that using testosterone is going to cause prostate issues or prostate cancer. And nothing could be further from the truth. Like the two biggest doctors in the world that have done all the research on prostate now, on prostate cancer and prostate diseases and incidents, two of the guys are from the University of North Carolina. And again, they're in my book. I can't think of their names right now. And then the other doctor is a guy by the name of Dr. Abraham Morgan Taylor, and he's a very famous Harvard physician. And these guys have written master dissertation theses on why the belief or the theory that using testosterone is going to cause prostate issues is actually the inverse. In fact, they actually now have a giant theoretical model called the inverse process model regarding testosterone and prostate issues. And they're now saying same thing, that low testosterone is bound to create prostatic tumors and prostatic hyperplasia, which is a swelling and increase in the size in the prostate as you age, versus having optimal testosterone or optimal blood testosterone levels will keep the testosterone smaller. So again, it's the opposite of what we've been led to believe. And across the board in most medical facilities and with doctor training across the world, they don't understand that. So it's like, they read my book and they're just kind of blown away. And then of course, the same thing with cancer. I think that's more of a myth that's been promulgated in the media due to football players like Lyle Alzado and other people that, had admitted to using anabolic steroids when they were professional athletes. Same thing with Lance Armstrong. And then, they had cancer. That doesn't mean anything that it had to do with their use of, performance enhancement, steroids, testosterone, whatever. But again, the media likes to glom things together and say, oh, well, using testosterone or using steroids or blah, blah, blah is what caused them to have cancer. There's absolutely no conclusive proof anywhere on any of the data and any of the research that the therapeutic use, again, the clinical prescription of testosterone causes cancer or exacerbates tumor formation or anything like that. It's just complete myth.
So what do you think the big conspiracy behind that is then?
So, and I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on here. Hold on one second. Let me look for it. The truth is that, as I've written about in my book, and I've written prolifically on the various blogs and forums and stuff like that I contribute to, they do not want masculinity in the world anymore. I don't know what the end game reason is for that. Maybe it's the Soylent Green theory, where they're going to come down and they're going to herd everybody, into ships or FEMA camps or whatever, FEMA camps, Rex. And they don't want strong, masculine men who are resistant and, logically thinking and capable of resisting. I don't know if it's that reason, but whatever it is, essentially with the chemicals, with the byproducts, with the Monsanto and the engineered, food and the endocrine disruptors, we are creating a society of just men that are not masculine. Okay. And again, I have a whole chapter in my book. It's entitled The War on Men. I have numerous studies linking. Check out this research. So in the last 20 years, the global sperm count for men, and this is a global phenomenon, has been reduced by half. So we have gone from having 50% less sperm count globally as a male species on this planet in the last 20 years. So why is that happening? It's a multitude of reasons in my theory and my belief, and as you know this too, and you and I have talked about this, all you have to do, bro, is go out in society at any major city, in any place where there's a congregational spot and tons of people showing up and walking around, and look at dudes.
Let me jump in real quick on that.
Sure.
If you turn on the TV set, if you don't like crowds and you just want to turn on the TV, watch a commercial. 90% of the commercials out there, if there's a guy, he looks like this real metrosexual, almost homosexual, maybe a lot of times gay. And hey, I don't care what sexual preference you are. You can clearly tell that he's very feminine and he doesn't really have any masculinity. He doesn't have the testosterone. He's more estrogen based, and it's in the commercials. It's everywhere. And you've still got those select few pockets, etc., of people that are masculine and strong, but I'm not necessarily just strong, but have that male persona archetype, Popeye kind of deal. Yep. And what I see also on top of that is I wonder how far it goes, intertwining it. If you want to look at even the vaccines on top of that, if there's specific chemicals that you can link from the vaccine that will suppress particular testosterone levels and other things.
So all of the above, and I'll take it one step further. I agree, obviously, wholeheartedly, 100%. That guy you're talking about, the perfect archetype is Seth Rogen. Look at Seth Rogen, right? He's in all the beer commercials. He's everywhere. And what is he? He is this totally emasculated, feminized, high estrogen, dad bod, horrible physique, completely subjugated around women, like in those beer commercials with the woman, she just plays them like a cheap suit. That's what they've created, right? That's the society we have now where men are worthless. Get out of the way.
And he's one of the more manly ones. As terrible as that is, he's got a beard.
It's literally amazing, dude. So you're right. There's no question. Gone are the days of, Sylvester Stallone and John Wayne and Clint Eastwood. There is just, again, nobody really knows, right? Because you could make an argument that 25 years ago when they were putting Schwarzenegger and Stallone and Clint Eastwood Eastwood and John Wayne and, these rugged, masculine alpha male archetypes. And now it's gone. So there's got to be something behind it, but very, very clearly it's everywhere in society. I mean, dudes have no testosterone. And that's why, my message is so important to me and really to anyone who really is concerned about, maximizing their living, capabilities on the planet. It's like, if you're like one of those dudes, and this is something we haven't talked about on the show so far, but if you're one of those dudes and you're suffering, dude, your life sucks. You can't get an erection. You can't make a decision. Your girlfriend or your wife is probably running all over you. Because again, these are all the symptoms of having low testosterone. You're totally indecisive. You have that horrible brain fog. You're totally unmotivated. I mean, it's like most guys that I talk to that have low testosterone, their number one complaint, and this is where most guys get it wrong, is just an inability to focus. Literally, like they come back from lunch and by 2:00 in the afternoon, they're like, fuck, man, I got to go home and take a nap. I am done. And that is literally the number one symptom is just a lack of cognition, just complete brain fog. And that's also the first thing that comes online when you optimize your hormones and you go on, a replacement dose of testosterone is like you get the mental acuity back. You become razor sharp again. You're like, wow, I can't believe this. And that's almost every guy that I've ever worked with has said the same thing. They're like, that's the one thing I didn't understand.
On top of that, if you were to look at the overall amount of people that that are on it, I mean, how much has it affected their life over, let's say, someone that's been on it a month, somebody that's been on it a year, 10 years?
So, dude, honestly, like I tell this, and again, there's always outliers. There's always plenty of guys out there that work with the physicians that have no idea what they're doing. That's a whole other story. But for anybody who works with a progressive physician that understands how to balance hormones, how to balance a man's endocrine system. And again, I'll tell you this because I haven't said this, but there's two goals with testosterone replacement therapy. And that is, number one is happiness. Is the patient feeling amazing? Does he feel balanced? Does he feel like he's in charge of his life? Endless energy, great sex drive, great performance and stamina in the gym, in his workplace, blah, blah, blah. That's number one. And then number two is balance. And it's balance between testosterone and estrogen, which are the two powerful hormones, right? So as you know, and as we were just talking about, right now, estrogen is the dominant hormone in male society. Estrogen leads to men being fat. It means them being emotional. It being like, very soft and feminine, like you said, demasculinated or emasculated, and just indecisive, like just running around like a woman, basically. And that's like you said, like the metrosexual beta male. And that's what's out there right now. And it's just really, really unfortunate. But when you go on testosterone, again, working with the doctor who knows what they're doing, you will look at your life, I swear to God, as pre and post, because you feel that much better, right? Like I do not drink coffee. I do not take any other drugs. I use obviously testosterone. I even brought a shot here. I'm happy to inject myself, on this show to show you guys how simple this is. But I take 3 shots a week, every other day, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And that's my regimen. This is 50 milligrams, as you can see right here. It's 50 milligrams. And that's what I do. And I have unlimited energy. I work 17 to 18 hours every day. I have a really strong sex drive. I'm focused. I'm very balanced. I'm not like, a lot of guys think like, oh, well, if I use that, am I going to want to have sex with like everybody I come into place with? No, not at all. I mean, as long as you're, in a good relationship and committed with an awesome person, it doesn't make you think like that. But you definitely just have more energy, a stronger desire to tackle life. I mean, it's amazing. And again, I'm not, that's me, but almost every guy that I've ever known who's done this right and worked with the right physician and really applied this into their life feels better. Now, one thing that needs to be said, and you already said this in the very beginning of the show, which was very eloquent, is testosterone is not a cure-all. It's not a panacea. It's not a magic bullet. But if you use it and then combine it with a dialed-in life, as I call it, which is, yes, you're eating right. Yes, you get enough sleep. You sleep at least 6 to 8 hours every night, consistently. And you also exercise. Hopefully you do a combination of some form of resistance, weight training and cardio. If you do all of those things and you use testosterone clinically, dude, you're going to be amazing. You're going to be a Superman. So it goes back to that whole thing, though, of what you said. Why, does our world, does our government, does our pharmaceutical system, our medical system, why do they not want Supermen? Well, hello. They don't want people that are outliving the medical industry and the pharmaceutical industry. They want people that are dumb, fat, sick, and unaware.
Hello.
And that's why, and that's how they treat our society. And that's why the medical system, the medical schools do not even treat for this. Now, again, I'll point to this, and you can pull this up later and throw it in there. But I mean, I have an article, on my Facebook wall today, actually in the last 2 days. It's a massive controversial subject because they published Donald Trump's testosterone level 2 days ago. And of course, the mainstream news made a big issue out of it. And they said, oh, he has high testosterone. First off, it's complete bullshit. His testosterone is like 400. So, in a 70-year-old, because he's 70 years old, I think, or 69, but in a 70-year-old patient cohort, he's probably in like optimal level from a standpoint of he's not like super low, but at the same time, he's not high. He's not optimal in like a range where he should be. But of course, they reported it. But anyway, the reality is that in this article that I published on my Facebook wall, they have literally the president of Los Angeles County endocrinology doctors. He's like a very high level doc. And his prognosis and his statements about why they would test for testosterone or why they shouldn't test for testosterone are the most outrageous, egregious, absurd, nonsensical shit that I've ever heard in my life. And everybody, and I got all these like, high level thought leaders and doctors, the progressive doctors are on my Facebook wall, all commenting in this thread. There's probably 200 comments. It's an amazing thread, but it just goes to show you that even at the highest level of medicine today, these guys are still clueless. Literally clueless. They have no understanding of when somebody should have their testosterone levels measured and so it's so important. Again, they would still rather give you a diabetes drug or a SSRI inhibitor, a mood alter, a mood elevator, and an erectile dysfunction drug than test your hormones because, again, they don't have any understanding of what it even means. They're clueless.
I was just looking at that, and it looked like it was 441 or something like that. And it's amazing how much the media can spin things, and they do it with everything. Everything, exactly. They can get more ratings, they can sell more product, push their agenda better. Whoever's funding them, they tend to push towards that direction. And you can certainly see a trend there. And I like where you're going with this. I'm going to go to your website right now, TRTrevolution.com, and tell us more about things that you feel is important that people need to be aware of, Jay, that maybe I shouldn't, or that I haven't asked that I should have. You know a lot more about this than I do.
Sure. So, I think you've asked all the right questions. We could talk a little bit about side effects because when you use any medication, there's always side effects. I mean, honestly, the side effects from using testosterone replacement therapy, when done right, again, under the care and guidance of a progressive physician who understands what they're doing, there are no side effects. I mean, the side effects would be, unlimited energy, like just like a lack of sleep sometimes because you have higher energy. Initially, when you first start therapy, depending on your body fat level, you might have to use another ancillary medication known as an aromatase inhibitor. And again, without getting too esoteric, but just to explain it very simply. And again, all of this stuff is in the book. It's very simply laid out. I actually wrote my book in a way that any person, and even women, and I say this all the time, I encourage women to read my book because it will really help them when their husband is struggling and suffering from low testosterone, but can't get therapy or help from a doctor. Because again, most of the doctors don't know how to even treat it. So most guys suffer in silence. But I wrote it. It's like 14 chapters, I think now. It has 182 pages. It's filled with pictures. It's filled with charts. It's very, 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 it's written for like a 7th grader. It really is. But I also wrote it so that any man or woman can pick it up and read from any chapter and apply it to their life, right? So if you're like a 58-year-old guy who doesn't give a shit about really anything, but like can't get an erection anymore and wants to understand the best delivery system to use to improve sexual performance or libido, you can just open up to chapter 6 and say, okay, Jay recommends this. He says to go use this doctor if I live in this part of the country or this part of the world, and boom, you take it away. He read 2 pages. So I wrote it in a very, very lay, very simplistic fashion so that anybody could apply it. But don't mistake that it's not also written for physicians, because it is. The book has been written for both physicians and patients. I've had, probably 50 doctors leave me 5-star reviews on Amazon about the book. They say that they're, using it in their practices now. It's like the standard patient care protocol for andrology and testosterone. So I've got a lot of amazing feedback from the medicinal community. And again, I want to make it very known in this, podcast. And obviously, this is a leak project, and we talk about, gray market, esoterica, that kind of stuff. But I do support the medicinal community that's at the forefront of this. There are a lot of great, amazing progressive physicians. I happen to work with many of them, and they're doing a great job. Believe me, they are fighting an uphill battle. The system is completely designed, as you know, Rex, against them. It's very, very difficult to get this. None of these guys, for the most part, can actually get this scripted through their benefits, and it's really sad because honestly, and I haven't said this, but using testosterone right will solve almost every issue. Like literally, depression goes away. A lack of energy goes away. A lack of sex drive goes away. More stamina, more strength, more power, training, exercising, walking, whatever it is that you need to do in your life, that improves. So it really can be that holy grail magic bullet panacea for the people that balance everything else out. And I want it to be known, and obviously I preach this and live this on a daily basis, but I want it to be known that it can solve a lot of problems. But the side effects, just so guys know, when you first start, You can get a little bit of acne. Again, that goes away as soon as you balance the testosterone and estrogen. You may need an AI, which is called an aromatase inhibitor, which is another medication. It's like a tiny little pill that you take to balance your testosterone and estrogen. Eventually, and mostly guys that are fat, okay, they have higher than 25% body fat. They need an AI initially to balance their testosterone and estrogen. But again, a good physician will eventually wean them off so that they're just using testosterone. I'm trying to think of any other side effects. The only type of side effects that can happen is when you're using a delivery system that I don't recommend, like a cream. Like a lot of guys use creams and gels because they're afraid of needles, which is kind of silly. I haven't injected myself, but you can look at this needle. This is a 29 gauge needle. You can't even feel it. You can inject yourself in your arm, your shoulder, your quad, your glute. I mean, it's very, very simple. You don't even feel this. This is a 20-second process. So most guys that have like a needle phobia are just like, it's just, it goes away. And almost everyone has a needle phobia initially, but then once you inject yourself once or twice, and you can have your wife or your significant other do it if you're initially scared, you don't even feel it. And then it just becomes a regular part of your life. Like a lot of guys say it's like brushing your teeth, so you do this 2 or 3 times a week. Most guys take 2 shots. I like to do 3 because I like to do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I don't know. It's just a routine I've gotten into, but I could do 2 if I wanted to too. But side effects, really nothing. A little bit of acne goes away. If you're genetically predispositioned to lose your hair, testosterone is a very strong androgenic and it can speed the rate of hair loss. Okay. So does that mean that anybody who uses testosterone is going to lose their hair? Absolutely not. Okay. I've never lost any hair from testosterone. I'm getting older. I'm 46. My hair is definitely thin, but I have no hair loss from testosterone. I never have. So if you're genetically predisposed to it, it may speed the rate, but it's not going to just like magically cause your hair to fall out if you're not predisposed to it. I'm trying to think else.
Does it shrivel up your balls?
So that's a great question. So it can reduce. So once your natural production stops, and it's called your hypothalamic testicular axis. Once that becomes suppressed from using exogenous testosterone, your testicles, your testes descend, which means they come up inside the sac, so that they're not like hanging, saggy scrotal sac balls anymore. But actually, it will increase the size of your penis because your penis is an organ, and your organ also swells with nitrogen. Just like when somebody uses a vasodilator like Viagra or Levitra. It increases nitrogen formation in the organ. So if you theorize, and again, this is written about in the book, if you use testosterone for 30 or 40 years, and obviously you have to do that if you're choosing to do this for lifelong and do it right, it will increase the size of your penis. And most men that use testosterone will notice that they'll probably gain, a quarter to a half, and some guys even maybe an inch over time, because again, their penis engorges with blood so much easier, and they do hold nitrogen there much more. So it's not like it's some sort of a penis pump or it's going to make your dick grow or anything like that, but it can increase the size of your penis. But there are other medications that you can take to keep your testicles from descending. That's called they're called HCG, which is human chorionic gonadotropin. It's a female and male fertility drug. It's what people take when they're trying to have kids and they're using in vitro fertilization therapy, and then of course other therapies. But there's 2 other medications. Another one called HMG, which is human menopausal chorionic gonadotropin, and then there's clomiphene, which is another pill. So the 2 of them are like injections. They're like water injections, like insulin, and then the clomiphene is a pill. But all 3 of those will keep your balls from descending, and you definitely need to use those medications when you're in your 20s and 30s and you want to have kids, because again, as you already said very correctly, testosterone does stop your body's natural production using exogenous external testosterone. So you do, in order to maintain your fertility, you do have to use those other medications. But if you're not having kids, you're past having kids, you're done, you have a vasectomy, or you're just, you're in your 40s and you start and you're done having kids, you've already had your kids, then you don't have to use any of those medications. You can just use testosterone. So I'm just trying to think if there's any other side effects. If you use the creams or the gels, again, I don't recommend those, but for some people, they're just totally needle phobic. They won't do it. Initially, you can have what is called a very transient spike in PSA for your prostate, which can like make you feel like your prostate is like increasing in size a little bit and may narrow your urethra when you pee. So if you don't have like a really strong urine stream when you're standing there, and it just like comes out, like more hesitant, then that's usually transient from using the cream, and it will go away. And again, a good progressive physician will fix that too.
I wonder if Hank Hill actually didn't get enough testosterone then, or took too much, because that was always his problem in that cartoon. He had a narrow urethra. You remember that?
Well, yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny because like most people don't understand this, and this is a scientific fact, but almost every man who lives to the age of 80 dies with prostate cancer. Not of prostate cancer, but you have a form of prostate cancer. So again, it's one of those weird organs that was left over from when, whoever created us, the Anunnaki.
I just don't think they use it enough. That's the problem.
Well, it's that too. It's technically like a vestigial organ. We don't really understand why it's there. I mean, yes, it's there right now to for the seminal vesicle and for sperm production and the vas norepinephrines and all the other things that are down there. But as we age, you're right, it's not used, and it does increase in size. And so, like I said, like 99.9% of men, if they live to the age of 80, have some form of prostate cancer at that time. So I mean, the prostate, if you know about the prostate, you understand how it works, and you know the latest data now too. That's a whole nother reason why you should be using testosterone, because again, it standardizes the rate of expansion of the prostate as you age, and it will slow it down. So it will lessen the rate of BPH, which is benign prostatic hyperplasia, which is the increase in the size of the prostate as you age. So I'm just trying to think if there's any other side effects. All the other side effects that they report are either misinformation, myths in the media, or happening to men that already had pre-existing conditions, right? So if you had a pre-existing heart condition, you're fat, you don't take care of yourself, and you go on testosterone, is it possible that you might have a heart incident because you're on testosterone? Well, yes and no. I mean, I would say that you're more exposed because of your lifestyle factors of being fat and already having a heart incident in your life. And there's obviously always genetic correlations and factors too, but I just don't see it, dude. Again, obviously I'm a huge proponent of testosterone, but I've seen and worked with thousands of guys around the world. And in most cases, by and large, for the guys that really do dial this in and they treat this as, the life enhancing and life expanding, process that it is, I mean, there's no side effects. I mean, again, anything that you suffer from a side effect standpoint when you're working with a great doctor is very transient. It's very short term, and you get balanced out. Again, I mean, I'm 17 years on test now. I use nothing else but this. I'm not taking any other ancillary medications. If I could post my blood work right now and show you how amazing my blood work is, I have like the blood work of like a 17-year-old, triathlete. I have no plaque. I have super low cholesterol. And cholesterol is, of course, mostly genetic, but I have low triglycerides. My C-reactive protein and my homeocysteine levels are super low. So, I mean, I have like the blood work of a person who's in elite shape, and I have no indications that, using testosterone has put my body to higher risk factors.
What are some options for people that don't have $600,000 a month that want to do something to increase their testosterone, some natural alternatives and options as well?
So it's a great question. I struggle when I talk about like how to increase testosterone naturally, because mostly it's a myth. Does that mean that you can't, engage in certain lifestyle factors and increase your body's natural production? Absolutely, it does. You can, but it's so minor that when you compare it to like actually using, a clinical dosage of testosterone versus like, an over-the-counter test booster, or increasing your body's saturated fat intake, or increasing your vitamin E or D3 dosages, or any of those other things, it's so minuscule. But like by and large, reduce your alcohol consumption. Alcohol converts to, triglycerol in the blood, which leads to triglyceride, which obviously is the form of storage fat, and it's also going to go right to your type 2 or type B receptors, which are literally your stubborn body fat receptors, which are the places your body is like most, prone to store body fat, which is obviously in the places that we least like it to, which is, for guys, it's in the belly or it's in the lower back. For girls, it's in the butt and the hips. So cut back on your alcohol, reduce your carbohydrates. So when you reduce your carbohydrates, and we haven't talked about this, and we can if you want, you suppress your insulin signal. Right now, the latest research, all the data that's coming out, the smartest doctors, and I work with a couple of these guys, they now know that high insulin leads to all the diseases, Rex. Cancer, heart disease, diabetes, glaucoma, even type 3 diabetes, which is actually Alzheimer's and dementia, is caused by high insulin. So if you're a typical fat American eating like shit, eating fast food 2 or 3 times a day, high sugar, HFCs, high fructose corn syrup, all the GMOs and trans-engineered foods that you already mentioned, you are going to fuck up your insulin chemoreceptors, which line your pancreas, which are the beta cells that keep insulin suppressed, that keep your insulin signal from going up and down. And again, without getting too esoteric, insulin is created when your body eats carbohydrates. So if you're a body person, if you have a body that's naturally fat, right, you're soft, you're chunky type of person, you have naturally poor insulin sensitivity, which means that when you eat carbohydrates, you have a spike in insulin. If you're somebody that's genetically elite and you're like a very naturally lean, muscular type person, then you actually have really good insulin sensitivity. And when you eat carbs, your signal from insulin is just tiny. So we're all genetically different from our insulin sensitivity signal. So to keep your testosterone, your natural testosterone higher, keep your carbs lower. Again, it doesn't matter your genetic correlation to how powerful your insulin signal is. Keep your carbs lower. And then, of course, you can, again, do your blood work, understand like what your levels of vitamin D3 are, because vitamin D3 is a precursor hormone. It's a precursor steroid hormone to testosterone. Having optimal vitamin D3 levels, from the sunlight, which, few people can get, especially if you don't live in Southern California or Austin, Texas, or I'm sorry, where you are in San Antonio. That's something you got to look at too. But by and large, lifestyle factors, tightening up your diet, increasing your better supplements and nutraceuticals, it's only going to give you a slight bump. I will say this to put this to bed. Every single testosterone booster sold online everywhere is a fucking scam. Zero value. All it does is take the money out of your bank account. It's not going to do jack shit. No study ever done on any of them has ever conclusively proven anything. So all those nonsense you see online, 6-pack abs, Vitrix
Monster Terminator 12-pack 1,000. Get it
Dude,
today.
all of them. Dude, all of them are scams. Every single one of them are scams. I wish I had $1 for every guy who's come up to me and asked me about a test booster supplement. I mean, it's unbelievable, I mean, but so many people continue to fall for marketing hype, and it's sad too, because a lot of the big players out there, and I won't mention names, but they sell them. Because they know these poor kids, these impressionable YouTube kids that watch these YouTube videos, they want the gains, man. I got to get gains, bro. I got to get gains. They think that like taking an over-the-counter test booster that they sell at GNC is going to make them become, Rowdy Roddy Piper in a week. I mean, it doesn't happen. And so I'm very, very militant about telling people that test boosters are a scam. Like, there's even the African herbs like Tongkat Ali and all this other thing. They're fucking horseshit. They don't do anything. Excuse my language. They don't do anything. There's no conclusive proof that they do anything except other than, like I said, just drain your bank account. Literally.
Now, also, I'd like to know what kind of effects it can have on women if they want to do something like this. Is that a good idea, bad idea? Will they grow a lot more hair and become manly and start talking to you? Hey, baby, how you doing?
So it's a great question, and I'll be very clear. Let's be very conclusive. So women that you've seen on like YouTubes and pictures on Google image searches and stuff like that look like dudes have unfortunately abused, anabolic and androgenic steroids and have made themselves morph into dudes. Okay. Obviously now it's a big thing, with all this transgender movement and transhumanism and God knows what else is going on. We see this cisgender and transgender and God, I don't even know. I can't keep up with it. But
Bingo.
Yeah, a woman who wants to become a man, which is now complete. Oh, by the way, speaking of, we didn't even say this, but that's completely acceptable by medicine to get scripted for testosterone, right? A man who's dying and is like suffering in every level cannot go to his doctor and get a script for testosterone, but a woman who wants to become a man sure can. So figure that out for me.
Welcome to the New World Order.
My God, bro. But literally, so women who use and abuse those drugs, like massive dosages of, again, the super physiologic dosages do become masculine. They do start looking like dudes. Now, fortunately for some of them, it's not permanent. They can come off and they can retain their femininity. However, some of them use very harsh chemicals. Again, I'm not an expert in talking about those, but they literally can cause virilization, which is like a permanent form of, that masculinity and that, chiseled chin look, and like you said, the hair and the acne, and just their face just gets engorged. They look like a dude. I mean, it's horrible, and a lot of those women never change, and they stay like that. So not all, but some do. So, but that's abusing and taking super physiologic dosages. But back to testosterone in women. This is a very, very misunderstood subject. I'm actually right now in the background working with a very, very strong woman practitioner, a nurse practitioner in Phoenix, Arizona, who's a brilliant administrator of hormones for women and hormonal optimization for women. And we're contemplating on some sort of a work. I don't know if it's going to be a book or some sort of a YouTube series, but she's brilliant. She works with literally hundreds of women around the world, and she knows how to administer hormones. And so the point is that women can also benefit from testosterone. Okay, women need a super, super small, minor micro dosage, even beyond like what men take and get. But when done and worked with a progressive physician who understands a woman's endocrine system, who knows how to also balance estrogen with testosterone and progesterone and estrone and all those other different things, because obviously women are a little bit different hormonally, dude, women are amazing. They have better sex drive. They have, more energy. They can get leaner. They can get rid of like the areas where they have like the muffin belly. I mean, I'm telling you, dude, that actually works. Using hormones with women works better than with men, because as a very good physician friend of mine told me one time, because of the way a male hormone system is, women have naturally less hormonal and a lesser hormonal environment than men. They're not as hormonally reactive. So when you balance a woman's hormones by giving them a little bump of testosterone and maybe whatever else they need, maybe estrogen, it's like giving a dry plant water. So that's why you see a lot of women, and it's become very, very prominent today in the world with like fitness bikini models, right? Like, they're everywhere. They have all these bikini competitions. That's become like this giant cottage industry now too. But you see like tons of women in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who look amazing, who look absolutely amazing, low body fat, beautiful, non-masculine, very feminine looks. And that's all because their hormones are optimized. So it's a lot easier to optimize a woman's hormones once it's dialed in, it's definitely harder initially, and you got to work with an amazing physician that truly understands a woman's system. But once a woman gets dialed in, their benefit from a physicality standpoint, like in aesthetics, is better than a man's. And that's just because, like I said, their hormonal environment is a little bit lessened, and giving it to them increases and exacerbates like formation of muscle, of fat loss, and all that stuff. It accelerates it even better than it does with dudes.
Sure. And I'm also a huge fan of mixed martial arts. There's a person in particular that I'm thinking of that's considered the best female mixed martial artist in the world. And she looks like a man. And you can clearly tell the chin, the facial structure. That's, if she wasn't, I really doubt she was born that way and morphed into that.
No,
male.
I think I know who you're talking about. We won't mention her name, but yeah, I mean, again, those type of gals are using stuff. Again, it's not I have no clue. I don't know them. I don't know who trains them. I don't know what people they work with, but I would assume
I will break you.
I would assume that those people are using a super physiologic dosage. And that's the way they look. But again, it's surprising with a lot of women. Like a lot of women can look, masculine and jacked up and still use a very low dosage. Because again, a woman, like I said, it's the whole, dry plant, giving a dry plant water. They're just hormonally not like dudes.
Sure. Absolutely. And also another thing that I was thinking about with the different doses and stuff like that people take, would there be certain things that you would recommend do you want to drink more water? Do you want to detox more? Stuff like that?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I mean, again, it's that whole, it's like dialing yourself in from a standpoint of nutrition, foods, and obviously, yes, water. You want to drink a lot of water, but all of those things, when you dial yourself in, testosterone can only enhance. Everything else is enhanced from a standpoint of just like you just feel better. Again, the more energy, you're going to have lower body fat. All of those things, again, because testosterone is also, in addition to it also being somewhat anabolic in that it can enhance tissue building and formation, it's also what is called lipolytic. So it means it improves lipolysis, which is fat burning. So it increases your body's metabolic rate a little bit, just a slight uptick. But again, when you combine it with all the other things like, lowering your carbohydrates, eating clean, not avoiding engineered and, Monsanto type foods, and as you said, drinking a ton of water, it definitely increases and improves every part of your life. I would say too, that, always to write that in is that using alcohol, when you make a decision to go on testosterone for life and truly optimize your hormones, you should not be drinking alcohol. Okay, does that mean you can't, enjoy a brew with your buds, watching a football game or whatever? Be an American bro. Of course, you can do whatever. Anything in moderation is fine. But if you're a guy who's like a fucking big drinker and you're pounding them on and tying them on 3 or 4 nights a week, and you're on, using a clinical dosage of testosterone, it's not good because ultimately alcohol is a very, very potent chemical. As you and I have talked about on the Decoders of Truth previously, alcohol is a nerve toxin. Okay, there's nothing worse for the human body biochemically than alcohol. What alcohol does in the bloodstream, it alters DNA. They now know, right, that like dudes give this gene to their sons. I mean, it's passed on in families. Alcohol is genetic, or alcoholism is genetic. So, if you're going to do anything and you really want to exacerbate or enhance your, ability to like really maximize and optimize TRT lifestyle, cut back on the alcohol, man. And what I mean by that is like, 1 glass of wine, a couple nights a week at most, or if you're going out on weekends, have a couple mixed drinks and that's it, man.
Great. And also, I'd like to ask you about some of the esoteric knowledge that you've gotten into. Let's jump into maybe the next segment here before we close out tonight, because you've just hit on so many powerful points with the information you've given us. I'm sure that 90-something% of this, most people haven't heard this side of the story, so much appreciated.
Thank you, man.
Absolutely. And I'd also recommend that our listeners go to trtrevolution.com. You can actually download the book. It's absolutely free. And if you want to get a copy of the book, an actual paper copy, I'd strongly recommend that. It's always nice to have something in your hand. You can smell the paper and read through the pages. It's a lot easier on the eyes. And, you've got great podcasts that you do. We also have Decoders of Truth. I jump in a lot of times with you guys on that. You guys do that once a week, and I do my best to make it as often as I can. That's usually Thursday nights. We might start doing it live. But right now we do have a segment where if you do have an opportunity to be a part of Decoders of Truth, it is a private group if you want to get involved in that. Jay's doing a great job with that. Gerald is involved. Matt LaCroix. They're just giving a ton of information on the lineage of the Anunnaki, sacred geometry, symbolism, how it all intertwines with politics today, global leaders, a lot of great stuff. So not only is Jay really in tune with the body, but he is with the mind and the soul as well. So let's get into how you originally started. Where was your peak of interest with the occult, the unknown?
That was a great summary of the Decoders of Truth, and thank you for that. So, dude, man, I have been like a massive student of this. Since I said, I think a couple times on our podcast together, since I was 11 years old, man. I remember just being in church, raised Catholic. I'm the oldest of 9 kids, and just like looking up at like the rectory of this big Catholic archdiocese in Utica, New York, which is in upstate New York, and like looking at like the things and the paintings and stuff like that on the church, and looking at all the money that was in this like small, upstate, like really like low socioeconomic place. It's like definitely blue collar, if not lower, mostly poor people. And like looking at all the money that was in this church, and I was like, this is not penciling. What is going on here? So it's like, I knew at that point that something wasn't right. And honestly, from that moment on, I just started reading and sucking down. And as you know, I'm a voracious reader, but I just started sucking down every esoteric book that I could find. And I'm 46. That was 31 years ago. 33 years ago. I mean, I think the first book I read was probably the Chariots of Ezekiel, which I can't remember. One of my uncles gave me the book. I think my uncle, one of my uncles was like a Vietnam vet, and he was a big conspiracy theorist back then. And he had like all kinds of books. He had like William Cooper stuff. And so I had all these things that I was able to access at like 11, 12, 13 years old. And dude, I went down the rabbit hole from there. I mean, I started reading, I'd say, I think I read, what was William Bramley's book? I can't even think of what it's called. Gods of Eden. I read Gods of Eden when I was like 15 or 16. And then, dude, from there, it was just like nonstop. I mean, I know I read, Eric von Daniken. I read every book that you could possibly read about what was going on in Egypt with the pyramids and the Sphinx. And then I started moving into like Masonry and understanding like the Hermetic principles. I was a huge mythology student. I was actually reading mythology when I was 7 or 8 years old. Like my dad gave me the Greek and Roman mythology books. And I even then had like this wondrous awe of reading these things. Like, who the hell would have created and come up with these, right? Like these giant titans and these gods, and they have all these powers and everything. So like now that never really made sense to me, although I was always like pursuing like a higher level of knowledge. Again, that whole esoteric, that search for meaning, that understanding mankind's ancestry. And dude, honestly, like as you know, I mean, I put myself up against pretty much anybody's knowledge of this. I've read over 500 books on this stuff. I mean, I still try to rip through 3 or 4 books a month on this stuff. And, since I met Gerald and obviously you guys have pushed me down, and you do such an amazing job with the Leak Project, dude. You have so many different, different people and different personalities and perspectives, and it just blows my mind. And obviously it just continues to push me down the rabbit hole. But I met Gerald about 10 months ago, and I reached out to him and sent him an email, Gerald Clark I'm talking about. And I sent him an email and I said, hey man, your 7th Planet book, because I had already read his Anunnaki of Nibiru. I'm a huge Anunnaki guy. I had read Michael Tellinger's Slave Species of the Gods. I read Neil Freer. Of course, I read, Sasha Listen. I read just about everybody who's ever written anything in TRT. I mean, the Anunnaki. And so I've been a big student of that. And when I read Gerald's book, it just melted my brain. And so I sent him an email and I was like, Gerald, man, how can we link up? I want to meet you, or I want to start like talking to you or something like that. I'd like to pick your brain and find out. And subsequently, Gerald reached back out to me, and we become really good friends. And obviously the Decoders of Truth, and I met Matt LaCroix. Everything is kind of taken off from there. But yeah, dude, I love reading about that stuff, and I'm fascinated. I've just been a seeker since like I said, I was 11 years old.
And also, did you ever get into the readings such as, I don't know, certain hermetics? You said you really got into that. So did you study specific types of hermetics and stuff like that, and things to do to mentally get to that level of some of these higher gurus, I guess you could say?
Well, it's a good question. So I did read I have not read the Nag Hammadi. I mean, I'm very familiar with its teachings and stuff like that. I have read, Lash's, John Nash. Is it John Nash or John Lash?
John Lash.
John Lash.
And
yes, I've read all of his books. Yeah, and Steve Nash. You're Steve Nash. I've read John Lash's books, and I've read a lot of other stuff about the Gnostics. I'm fascinated by the Gnostics and the whole Gnosticoi and just Gnosticism in general. But no, I think it's just been a general progression for me. I just, if something, I mean, obviously as Amazon expanded its reach, and you could go on Amazon and get lost, spend an hour in there and you just find all these amazing books.
Sure.
I'm currently reading, at the suggestion of both Gerald and Matt, I'm currently reading Manly Hall's, tome, its masterpiece dissertation on, the secret teachings of mankind, or the secret teachings of the old ages, or whatever it's called, the ancients, I think. And it's like 700 pages, and I'm like now 260 pages in it. And dude, I'm so blown away by this. I mean, this guy compiled this data in the 20s. It's just absolutely amazing. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, as I continue to read it, it just blows my mind. I mean, he's written about every philosopher, every great teacher, every hermetic priest, every mystery school adept. I mean, it's just incredible how he compiled all this data. It's almost like he was possessed by the spirit of Thoth or somebody, Hermes or something, because I don't know how he was able to, compress and analyze all that data and then compile it in a book. And again, this is way before the internet. This is way before digital technology. So it's amazing. And that's I think what just keeps me going going and why I keep maintaining being mesmerized by it all, dude, because it's like, as we say, is like you keep going down the rabbit hole. It just gets deeper and deeper and deeper, man.
You were talking earlier before the show, you were going to show us what it's like to actually go through this specific process right here.
Yeah, for sure. So, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to stand up a little bit. Hopefully I don't lose
Just
the
make sure
microphone.
you don't have to like shoot that right in your butt, do you? Right there.
No.
I'm just kidding, man.
And then, I just want to make sure you guys can see it. Can you see it right now? I can't.
Your arm's taking up the whole screen, Jay.
Okay, cool. So I'm just going to go right here. So literally, like, this is like a delt, like a tricep shot or whatever. You just go right here. And you can see how simple it is. I just go right in there. No pain. All the way in. Boom. See, I'm all the way in. No pain, nothing. Simple. You can see it, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then I just push down. See, once I'm in, it's like 20 seconds. I'm very methodical. Some guys go really, really fast and just push it right in, but I go really, really slow to make sure that, no issue. Look at that. Pull it out. Not even any blood. Just as simple as that. Now, if I was like being super hygienic right now, I would have an alcohol wipe and I would swab it. But honestly, like, I've been doing this for so long and, I'm so good at it and so skilled at it. I just take the cap off, put the cap back on. I drop it in a Sharpie. I don't have a Sharpie container with me here in my studio, but I just put it in the Sharpie container and then I dump it, once a month, in a Sharps Hazard, disposal thing. So that's how simple it is, dude. You do these 3 times a week, completely optimize your testosterone. Again, you feel amazing. Again, it's like I said, you'll look at your life as pre-TRT and post-TRT. Now, again, not everybody needs testosterone. I'm not saying that every guy needs this, but go get your blood work done, man. It's very simple. I work with Checked. So you guys can go to checked, chekd.com/TRT Revolution, and you can go down their funnel, and they're a little bit more expensive, but you can get a full metabolic panel, and they come to your house. So you don't have to go to any, blood bank or lab, where they draw it. They come right to your house. They do everything for you. I think it's $240. If you want to do a private place, like private MD Labs or discountedlabs.com, I think it's 180. So you're saving $60, but you're driving there. So obviously there's $60 differences. They're coming to your house and they do everything for you. But like I said, man, it's imperative for everyone watching this, guy or girl, to understand your biomarkers, to understand your lab work. What is wrong internally? What is going on with your internal biochemistry? Without that knowledge, there's no way you can ever prevent any of the quote unquote diseases of aging as they come. Understanding those biomarkers just gives you all of your risk factors and gives you a correlation, especially if you're doing it as once or twice a year, as you go through your decades of life, you just totally have working like a puzzle or a masterpiece of like everything that's going on in your blood. So it's like for me, I can go back, Rex, like 18 years when I started, and I have my blood in a file cabinet. I mean, now I just have them on PDFs on my desktop or on my laptop. But, at first, before the computers, the first 10 or 11 years, I got them in yellow manila folders in a file cabinet. So if I have any kind of change in my biomarkers, I can go back and I can look and say, oh, well, that's interesting. Why did this increase or why did this decrease? And again, like I said, it's amazing. But when you do this right, my biomarkers have improved. Since 1999 or 2000, whatever it was, I started when I was 29 to where I am now, everything has gotten better, more pristine, more clean. Again, when you're optimized like I am, and anybody can be, dude, it's everything is better. I mean, you're just not going to have the issues. Again, if you believe otherwise, it's just because you've been lied to by the media. It's a myth.
Well, I got to tell you, Jay, you certainly do sound like you know your stuff, man. You brought things to the table that I haven't heard of, and I am just much appreciated that you came on the show. I'd strongly recommend our audience go to TRTrevolution.com if you'd like to know more about the TRT therapy that's going on right now, testosterone replacement therapy. And Jay, thank you so much for coming on with us here at the Leak Project, my friend.
Rex, I really appreciate it, man. I hope I was able to, educate and inform the audience. And like I said, I mean, hopefully, a lot of these guys will take it upon themselves, guys and girls, to get their blood work done so they understand what's going on. But dude, I'm honored and humbled. And again, I so much appreciate you coming on the show.
Right on. And folks, I'd also recommend going to leakproject.com. If you become a contributing member, you'll get access to exclusive content. Also check out our YouTube channels, youtube.com/clandestine Time Lord, and our William Wallace channel. Have a fantastic day, everybody. Stay safe and be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. Talk to you soon. TRT Revolution, Jay Campbell, testosterone replacement therapy, cutting edge, optimal health, latest
Leak Project.
All right, folks, we have a real treat for you tonight. We have Jay Campbell from TRTRevolution.com. Now, what I really like about Jay, I feel makes him unique, different than a lot of people, especially that are at his caliber physically, is mentally he's at that level also. He's always reading and researching and looking for mental exercises, combining that with what he does physically, and he's kind of revolutionized, in my opinion, literally like TRT Revolution says on his website, TRTRevolution.com, the testosterone replacement therapy industry. So we're going to pick his brain and really dive into not only that book, but also his manifestation that he creates just by talking about things, and we'll get into that also. So Jay,
Awesome.
it's an honor to speak with you here at the Leak Project. How the heck are you?
Rex, man, first off, thank you so much for letting me come on the Leak Project. Obviously, you and I have known each other now for about 2.5 months through the Decoders of Truth stuff on YouTube. And then, I've obviously been a big fan of yours for literally a year or so, year and a half when I found out your YouTube page. And it's just so awesome now that we can collaborate, and not just, here tonight, but in the Decoders of Truth. But obviously, yes, thank you so much for bringing me on to talk about testosterone replacement. It is a very, very unrecognized global epidemic. And obviously, we're going to get into that and talk about this on the show. But man, I'm really pumped and excited to be here.
Me too. It's seriously an honor to know you. And even though we've only been in contact for, about 3 months, it seems like we've known each other a lot longer than that. So,
agreed.
Okay, so the medical industry, the medical mafia, big pharma industrial complex, I certainly see 90% error and maybe 10% that's good and has serious benefits to people. But, like, for example, if somebody gets super sick and they get a cut and antibiotics can fix it right up and that's the quickest option, I'm sure there's alternatives out there too, but maybe that's a great opportunity. If somebody breaks their arm, they need to go have somebody fix it real quick, cast it up, great. If you need to go get surgery, get something done really fast, emergency medicine, wonderful. But it seems like Big Pharma has literally taken over the doctor's way of life in that industry, so they're succumbed to this Borg system. And one of the things you don't hear a lot about is testosterone replacement therapy. What you do hear about it is, it's steroids. You're going to get cancer. That's what those meatheads are doing. Look at
right.
me. And there's people out there that do look like that. But seriously, if you do it the proper way, from what I understand, it can be very beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. So, just to put, everything out in front for your audience so that they understand this. So what I recommend and what I advocate, obviously, in my book and in my lifestyle and all the people that I reach out to and stuff is that we're talking about testosterone replacement therapy from a therapeutic range level for, ultimate vitality and longevity, right? So we're talking about a very small micro dosage of testosterone that a man and even a woman, and we'll talk about women and testosterone because that's also very misunderstood, but used to completely optimize and revolutionize their life. And so what happens with testosterone, especially, and we'll get into obviously, why what's happening right now with men worldwide, but as a man ages, they lose production of testosterone. And, most of the studies on testosterone, unfortunately, as far as like understanding it, like how much you lose as you age versus decades of your life is literally from the 40s and 50s. And as my book points out, as you mentioned, our grandfathers had much higher natural testosterone levels than we do. And then, of course, our fathers even more than what we have now, too. And again, the reasons for that is mostly environmental. When, in the 30s and 40s, when they first started doing these tests on testosterone and stuff like that, obviously we lived in the United States for the most part still in an agrarian economy, mostly agriculture. Yes, industry was starting to expand in some of the big cities. But for the most part, we lived in we had air quality that was not as contaminated as what we have today. So what you see today and why it's such an epidemic worldwide is almost all the coastal population centers, and this, Rex, as we've talked about this in the past, are just laden with particulates and BPA and phthalates and just so many different, horrible, harmful, what are called endocrine disruptors. Okay. What an endocrine disruptor is something that actually disrupts your endocrine system, right? The male endocrine system and the female endocrine system is what allows a male and a female to maintain their balance in their hormonal and biological system. So these endocrine disruptors are gnarly, man. They really, really cause havoc and just disrupt everything. And so what it's led to is, as we've gotten, into this 21st century now in the year 2016 is that the average guy, by the time they're 25 to 30 years old, is already starting to see a decline that normally didn't happen in, going back into like the 30s, 40s, and 50s until they were in their 60s. So it is like I said, an epidemic. It is completely unrecognized for the same reasons that you talked about at the very beginning of this, which is medicine as a whole is not trained to handle this. There is no standard patient care model for what is called andrology, which is the study of the male and female endocrine system or hormones. And it takes a very smart progressive physician trained and schooled in hormonal manipulation to actually even test for it. Like, Rex, I'm not kidding you, and you probably know this, but the average guy today who goes to his doctor at 30 and says, Doc, he complains of brain fog, a lack of libido, a lack of energy, just like that soul crushing, like I'm just indecisive. Well, here's what the doctor scripts him. Okay. The doctor will script him an SSRI inhibitor, right? Which is a Wellbutrin, a Paxil, a Restoril, a Prozac, something like that to increase their mood and make them feel better. And then on the same time, they'll also give them an erectile dysfunction drug like Cialis, Viagra, or Levitra. So what they're doing is they're lacing them and loading them up with pharmaceuticals that aren't even attacking the source, the root source of the problem, which is he now has a reduction in his natural testosterone levels. And so they're not even doing the blood work. They're not even trained in medical school to even test for it. And in my book, of course, I always default to my book, I have proof that optimizing a man's hormone levels will solve all those other issues. Like literally, you could solve 20 to 25 issues that a normal guy comes in and complains about. And we'll get through them in a second by just optimizing his hormones. And nobody, again, unless you're seeing a specialist and a very progressive physician who treats for this, is even looking at this. It's horrific, man, horrific.
So do you think that on top of the environment, and the medicines, maybe specific foods, particular products out there, the ingredients that are in them cause effects on the body to where people can't produce the amount of testosterone, or if it's a female, maybe she can't produce the amount of estrogen even, or testosterone on top of that?
Both of them. You're 100% accurate. All those things are leading to just a harmful hormonal cascade of just caustic, destructive, like I said, endocrine disruptors. But yeah, GMO food, engineered food, fast food, drinking out of plastic water bottles. I mean, you name it, from sitting in your car and, the sun hitting your dashboard and, releasing the petroleum distillate from the, just the rubber and all the other chemicals that are in your asphalt. I mean, there's no way to avoid this. And so, my theory, and again, as espoused in my book, is I'm saying that guys at the age of 30, and honestly, Rex, a lot of guys much younger, I talk about this. I didn't do a good enough job in my book. This will probably be V2 of the book, but there are a lot of guys around the world right now that are even seeing this in their late teens and early 20s. But it's imperative, if you are a dude and you care about optimizing your hormones and feeling the best that you can be, that you get your blood work done. And I have a cheat sheet and a guide. It's all step by step in the book on how you can do this. You don't need a script from a doctor. You can absolutely go to a private lab draw company. There's a lot of them now. I think probably 15 to 20 of them in just North America alone, and just pay $200, $180, whatever, with a coupon, and get a full comprehensive analysis of your blood so that you can understand your biomarkers. Because listen, no doctor is going to look at this stuff for you. Okay. As we know, if you are a quote unquote healthy person, non-sick, and you go to a doctor through your benefits and you say, hey doc, I'm feeling kind of blue and I read Jay Campbell's book on testosterone. I really want to get my testosterone, my blood testosterone levels measured. Rex, they'll look at you like you're fucking nuts. I mean, they'll literally look at you like, well, you don't need that. You're 27 years old. You're 32 years old. That's not something you need to do. That's for 70-year-olds. And that's if you're lucky and the guy's even smart enough to even say that he understands anything about testosterone. Most of them will just say, oh, no, you don't need that. Trust me, I'm the lab coat Dr. God, and you listen to what I say. So it's like I said, it's an epidemic. Most men don't even know that they have low testosterone, Rex, because again, what happens? They get scripted, Wellbutrin or Prozac or whatever, and their erectile dysfunction drugs. And then, 5 years later, their mood feels a little bit better because they're on those happy drugs, and they get stronger erections, better hard on, but they still feel like shit. They still have, brain fog by 2 o'clock. They still have no energy. I mean, it's the average guy in America. He comes home by 4 or 5 o'clock at night, 6 o'clock at night, and he's dead to the world. Can't have sex with his wife, can barely play with his kids, is fat, probably has a lot of abdominal obesity, has metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, you name it. And it is a disaster. And again, with all those other things, what is he? He's a perfect advocate for all the other pharmaceutical drugs that they're going to sell him to take care of all the other issues that could easily be cured if he had his hormones optimized.
So how much does it require as far as working out to stay in optimal shape? Like for you, you can definitely tell no matter what age group you're in great shape. How much do you work out a day or a week?
So Yeah, so it's a great question. So I'm 45 years old. I'll be 46 in February, and I literally train with weights at the most 4 times a week. Most of the time, due to my busy work life schedule, it's 3 days a week. I do have a stationary bike, and my wife and I have also a treadmill in our home. So we try to rotate, like wake up early in the morning before the kids get up, and the whole pinochle shuffle starts with school and work and all that stuff. And we'll try to do maybe 20 to 30, maybe sometimes 35 minutes of cardio, like on an empty stomach in the morning. Probably 4 days to 5 days a week. Like this week, dude, I haven't had a chance to even do cardio once this whole week. I mean, I trained yesterday with weights, and I think I trained on Monday and Tuesday. So 3 days. I haven't had time to do anything today. But if it depends. Like in my life, and my wife and I are very similar in our physiques and builds and how much care we take of ourselves. We're very type A's, obviously. Owning a business and being entrepreneurs. We're in real estate and stuff like that. But if we're trying to do something like go for an exotic summer vacation or a bikini, a beach location or something like that, which we did, like we went to Cabo in the very beginning of August, then we'll make a concerted effort to take like 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks where we really focus on our diet hardcore, where we eat lower carbs, reduce carbs, reduce our insulin signal, and increase cardio so that we're doing cardio like daily in the morning on an empty stomach. But weight training never really varies very much for me. But again, I'm 46 and I've been doing this lifestyle that I live and that I preach. This is 26 years. I've been doing this since I stopped playing basketball when I was 21 years old. So I mean, I'm almost 46 now. So it's like about 25 years I've been living this lifestyle.
When did you start doing the testosterone replacement therapy?
So it's a great question. So when I was 29, a month away from turning 30, I went to the doc and I said, hey, what's going on with me? I'm run down. And again, I was playing, I played basketball in college, and then I had a small cup of coffee overseas. I played in Austria. So when I came back, I still played in my 20s, in my mid 20s. I played in adult men's leagues, pretty competitively. And I think I was probably playing in 3 men's leagues when I was 29, and I just was broken down, dude. I had no idea what was going on with me. I went to the doctor, and again, this is in like 1998.